Good morning. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Fintech Americas team, wherever you are. But most importantly, and I forgot to tell the video guy this, I'm actually going to go down there for a little bit. I'll be back up. Most importantly, I want to thank you guys. I don't speak Spanish, so I have no idea what Ray and Maria just said. Did they tell you that this conference is sold out? Sold out. So give yourself a round of applause. It's not just about selling out. It's about a signal that sends to the Latin American financial services industry, right? It's a signal. Because I speak at a lot of conferences, and I have several coming up around the world, and they're struggling to fill the room. Not here, not you. It shows the commitment that you have to the transformation of your companies and the transformation of your industry. And I congratulate you for that. So I want to start. Well, actually, I have to share, I have a little bit of a problem. Joe, whoever he is the director of programming for Fintech Americas, and he gave me 20 minutes to talk about a topic that takes 20 hours. And the topic is, why is the future hybrid? Valid question. And as importantly, what the hell do we do about it? How do we march into that future at a company, at a country, at a planetary level? The good news is I will be here for 2 days. I will be around. I will have a name tag that says Chris Colbert. So if you want to talk about it at a deeper level, I will be here. Okay? Fair deal? Okay. So let's start. And I want to start by asking you guys a question, which is, what did you learn over the last 2 years of the pandemic? What did you learn when you were sitting at your desk, staring at a Zoom screen, staring at a wall, staring at your significant other, staring at your cat, staring at your dog? What did you learn? What did you learn about yourself? What did you learn about yourself? What did you learn about life? What did you learn about work? And what did you learn about banking, if you're in the banking business? Anybody want to give me one thing that they learned? Come on. One thing. I'm going to pick on you. What did you learn?
Brick and mortar is no longer necessary.
Brick and mortar is no longer necessary. Well, my talk is going to challenge that. Anything you learned? Anybody learn anything about themselves?
I miss people.
I miss people. A good one. Okay, so here's what I learned. I learned that society, that humanity is in disequilibrium. I learned that for many of us, there is an imbalance. I learned that by staring at that wall, we started thinking about our life, we started thinking about our work, we started thinking about the task of banking, and we realized this doesn't seem quite right. This needs to be put in equilibrium. And for the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to try to prove that to you. And I'm going to try to show you a way to achieve equilibrium in our lives, in our work, and in this industry that we call banking. And whenever I try to figure anything out, I default to psychology. Because psychology is the code behind our behavior. Just like technological code is the thing that drives applications, psychological code is the thing that drives our behaviors. And so as we seek to achieve greater equilibrium, we have to figure out the code and recode ourselves to get to the outcome that we're after. This is one of my favorite slides, because it implies that the creature on the right is far more sophisticated than the creature on the left, right? That's the evolution of humankind. But the truth is, I believe the creature on the right is just as primal, just as basic as the creature on the left. And the guy I always default to is Abraham Maslow. I think this slide is in virtually every presentation I've ever given. Psychologist in the 50s came up with this thing called the hierarchy of need. And his whole premise is that human beings, just like apes, wake up every morning starting at the bottom of this thing, and we care about the first level of need is air, water, food, shelter. And then when we have that, we go to the next level of need, which is safety, which in 21st century parlance is control. And then we go to the next level, which is about wanting love and belonging and connection with other human beings. And then for a few of us, we go to the next level, self-esteem, and for a very few of us, we work on self-actualization, which is a fancy word for realizing our human potential. What's interesting about this view through the lens of where we are today is this idea of technology. Digital technology has been a profound enabler of our ability to meet those first three levels of need. It is a mechanical function that has had a profound impact on the productivity of the world. As witness longevity rates, poverty rates, a myriad of other, call it structural benefits as the result of technology. Wonderful. The bad news is that technology is not so great on the higher level need stuff. And I would actually argue it can be a disabler. And I use as the poster child social media. Social media is a double-edged sword, right? On the one hand, we connect with people we haven't talked to in years. On the other hand, for a lot of us, it becomes an issue of validation. Like we're looking at social media going, why do they have more than I have? Why does that person get more likes than my post gets likes? The point of all this is not humanics versus technology. The point of all this is that we seek both. At a primal level, we seek both. We need the structural, functional improvements that technology offers, and at the same time, we want to feel a level of intimacy and a level of self-realization that technology may be not so good at helping with. And the guy who got this was this guy. And if whatever you are right now, this is exactly right. Sustainable value or competitive advantage or the realization of your life, whatever the context, it's there. It's in the combination of these two things, the aesthetic and the engineered, the humanic and the mechanic, the form, the function. Both sides have to come together to yield the outcome that we seek, both in here and maybe in here. That's the wallet, not my ass. The funny thing about this concept is it's been around for thousands of years. This is not new. Our search for equilibrium, our search for balance, our search for perfect harmony between both sides has been thousands and thousands and thousands of years in the making. You know this symbol, yin yang? I assume everyone knows this, right? But there are many examples. Male, female. Yin is feminine, yang is masculine. Men and women, yin and yang, balance. Imagine a world where there are only men. Yuck. Sorry, it's true. Left brain, right? Balance, you need both. Head and heart, you need both. Balance, balance, balance. I believe the pandemic showed us that we are out of balance. Imbalance. What is it, disequilibrio? Yeah, disequilibrio. So I already said this, right? Balance. Hybrid is about balance. So here's my question. You don't have to answer it out loud, but is your life, is your work, is your bank, if you're a bank, in balance? Are you in balance? Be honest. 10 seconds. Okay. So why exactly is this happening now? I mean, you sort of get my logic before, but why is it so hot? How did we get here? We saw in the video the second big bang, the explosion of digital, the birth of binary code, but I think this is the big one. What that did was addict us to speed. Not just everyday speed times 100, speed times 1,000. Saturday morning, this may be a little too personal. I'm lying in bed, wearing pajamas. That's actually not true. Lying in bed, and I have to check in for my flight to come to Miami. So I'm literally, I get my phone, and I check in 7 seconds. And I turn to my wife and I say, 15 years ago, that would have took like an hour because we would have had to gone to the airport, stand in line. Remember that? Any of you young and old enough to remember that? Like every part of our life has accelerated profoundly. Now, theoretically, that's a wonderful thing because faster is better, right, Sylvester? Oh, it's faster is better. Everybody agree faster is better? Anybody disagree? Raise your hand if you disagree faster is better. Raise your hand if you agree that faster is better. Don't do anything if you have no idea what I'm saying. This is an example of how cashless transactions, this is like a mind-blowing statistic on the hockey stick of faster is better. Just like we're addicted to speed, we're addicted to productivity. The measure of human progress up until recently has literally been economic gain. Productivity is our golden calf. We worship at the altar of productivity. Let's see how much more crap we can jam into 24/7. And then something happened. Holy shit. And all of a sudden we're staring at the wall, staring at the screen, staring at ourselves, and we're like, wow, what was that? Right? What was that life that we were just living? Because now that we're not living it, in retrospect, that was kind of wacky. So it all ends up, I think, for many of us, consciously, subconsciously, we are seeking an equilibrium. We are seeking to find that perfect place between aesthetic and engineered, form and function, mechanic, all that stuff. Balance. We are after balance. Now, the funny thing about humans, we're very simple creatures, even though we're complicated. So this is what happened. I used to work at Harvard. That's name dropping. So I was there when online education got really hot. And literally, the assumption was we teach in physical classrooms, and with online education, everything's going to go to the far right. There won't be physical classrooms anymore. There won't be brick and mortar. The guy left. But what happened? We swung all the way over to digital, and we get over there and we're like, oh man, this doesn't actually, it's not very effective. I mean, it's effective for some, but it's not effective in a lot of cases. It doesn't really work. And so what do? We go all the way over, and then we come back to equilibrium. Because equilibrium is where the answer is. The answer is not in the extremes. The answer is in the middle. But the middle's complicated, which is why we don't like the middle. We prefer the simplicity of the poles. A couple other examples. So not only did you have this thing happen, you also have a thing happen, like my funny personal example. My physician, my primary care guy, for years has resisted telehealth. So even if you want a prescription for, Ambien or something, because you travel a lot, you actually have to go to his office, wait for like a half hour to get him to write you a prescription for sleeping pills so you can travel, overseas. Finally, due to COVID, what does he do? He adopts telehealth. He goes to the middle. He heads towards digital. And similarly, it happens the other way. The digital players realize, oh, we have no real connection with the humans. I'm an e-tailer, I'm Bonobos, or I'm Warby Parker, the glass company. We need to create stores to actually get people to understand what we're all about. It's all about finding that middle place. So fundamentally, what I'm trying to convey to you, I think the great thing about COVID, which is a terrible thing, millions of lives lost, a lot of misery for a lot of people. The great thing is it allowed us to look in the mirror. All of a sudden, we had pause. All of a sudden, we were not running 24/7. And we could think, and we could contemplate, and we could feel, and we could maybe begin to explore the truth of what we wanted and what we needed and the life we wanted to live and the relationships we wanted to have and the work we wanted to do. And it was a wonderful moment of self-reflection. And out of that, we realized this. We are not technology. We are not this rug. We are not this building. We are not productivity. That's an outcome. We are human. And whatever you are trying to improve, your life, your relationships, your country, your company, your planet, whatever it is, it's about better connecting to that humanity. An understanding of you, an understanding of them. Climate, I was talking to several people earlier. Climate is ultimately a human behavior issue. It is not an industry issue, it is an us issue. And I think there's really good news in COVID helping us understand all that. I'm not going to explain this, but just later today, let's contemplate what's the opposite of this. You know what this means in real life? What is the opposite of in real life? I don't know. So I've been thinking about this hybrid question, this equilibrium question through the three lenses, three facets. How we live, how we work, and how we bank. And I don't really have enough time to go through it all, so I'm going to just try to do it at a high level. I actually believe in all three cases, what COVID did was expose the truth. I get interviewed a lot, and people are like, so what do you think about like the COVID pandemic and its impact on how we're going to change? I'm like, at the end of the day, all it did was magnify what we already knew. We already knew everything I've said. We just didn't acknowledge it. And this is what we knew about our life. It was relentless. We also, some of us knew this. Some, maybe a lot of our relationships were broken. Because you can't establish meaningful, caring relationships when you're running as fast as you can just to keep up. My favorite quote from the New York Times, they did a bunch of interviews with families impacted by COVID in a positive way. And this is from a 20-year-old kid talking about his relationship with his brother. I've laughed more and I cried more in the last 2 months than I did in the prior 10 years, or something like that. Right? COVID brought us together. It forced the truth of relationships. This is sad data. This is divorce rates impacted by COVID. It forced the truth, right? The Great Resignation exposed the truth, which is people were fundamentally not happy with what they were doing. Able to step back for the first time from their work, they were able to say to themselves, this doesn't work for me. It's all the same thing, and it boils down to this equilibrium thing within the context of life, I believe is really a search for meaning. We want more meaning. COVID taught us that life is precious. It is fragile. It is not guaranteed. And it allowed us to realize that the way our lives were not working for us. They were not delivering meaning. Okay, on the working side, same dynamic. This is a very Chris Colbert observation, so you may not agree. It exposed this about work. That the majority of companies in the world treat their employees like children they do not trust. And we have done something classically human. We have carried forward the labor practices from the industrial age, specifically the manufacturing assembly line mentality. We have brought it forward into the 21st century. So the structures and policies of companies have been oriented towards micromanaging the individual because we don't trust them. So they must arrive at work at 9 a.m. and they must leave at 5 p.m. and they are measured by how long they stay in their cubicle. And our employee policies are we're going to punish everybody for the 1% that might go off the rails. My favorite example of that is vacation policy. If you trust your employees, you would give them unlimited vacation. If you don't trust them, you would say, I'm only giving you enough vacation based on how many hours you work. Now, I don't really know what you did at work, but as long as you were in your cube from 9 to 5, I'm going to give you vacation. It's insane. It's particularly insane if you look at it through the lens of what employees actually want. So then we go back to Maslow, because I always go back to Maslow. So what do employees want? How many people here are employees? How many people here are not employees? What's the alternative? Okay, this is what people want. Base level, we want tools. We want to feel trusted. We want an environment that is safe. which means we are allowed to speak our mind. We want a sense of connection. We want recognition and appreciation. And then lastly, most importantly, we want the ability to achieve mastery, autonomy, and purpose. This is a Daniel Pink. You guys ever heard of Daniel Pink? He wrote it, not my words, but it's exactly right. We want the ability to achieve mastery, autonomy, and purpose. And so, question for you is, if you're running a company, how well are you doing against that list? Do your employees feel like they can achieve mastery, that they have autonomy, and that they are connected to a higher purpose? In a hybrid world, I believe this becomes a cost of doing business. I don't think you will be able to retain your best and brightest employees unless you are delivering at every level of need. By the way, this is a McKinsey study that basically says the senior managers think they're doing great and the employees think they're doing terribly. Senior managers are connected to purpose. The line employees feel no purpose. Huge gap between what we think and what they think. Can you guys set the timer or start the clock? Somebody? So working remote. So this is, I have like this fixation on working remote. This whole idea that the entire world is going to work remotely is crazy to me. And it's because of this. So I did this chart thing where basically in the work world, there are people or functions that can be quantitatively assessed and can be individually productive, and then there are other functions that require collaboration and can only be qualitatively assessed. So those that can work in the remote zone, like working wherever, any part of the world, my view are with direct sales as an example, programmers, there are very specific functions where it works. Most of us are in the hybrid zone, where it's a qualitative assessment of my performance, and I need other people to be productive, to be creative, to be innovative. And then there are a bunch of other factors at play. Now, interestingly, Gallup did a study, and it pretty much corroborates my math. 24% roughly in the remote zone, 75% in the hybrid zone. Fundamentally, the equilibrium that I believe many workers seek is more freedom. So again, if you're running a company, this is what you should go after, more freedom. I'm actually going to skip this. No, actually, I'll do it quickly. Okay. So how do you do that? If you're running a company, how do you actually achieve greater equilibrium for the people that work for you, enable them to find greater freedom? And I have a bunch of ideas. Number one, make human growth your most important KPI. And I'm going to do a talk about that tomorrow, so I won't belabor it. Number two, back to Daniel Pink, enable mastery and autonomy. Mastery connects to human growth, right? Developing people so they become masters in their particular vocation or function. And then this idea of purpose, defining purpose. This is the big one. Moving from a world where employees are children we don't trust to a world where they're adults that we trust. So you don't measure on how much time they're in their cube, you measure on their actual contributions. You don't look at tasks, you look at their behaviors. And you create policies that reward the 99% versus punishing the 99% for the 1%. And then the third one is this idea of psychological safety, which is a talk unto itself, but it's really suppressing hierarchy. Hierarchy crushes the capacity of companies to transform. Crushes it. And in a hybrid world, I don't think hierarchy works. I'm not sure it survives. Hierarchy of voice. Somebody mentioned vulnerability earlier. In a conversation, if you want people to step forward, you have to show a vulnerability in yourself as leaders. And then forgiveness is a fancy way of saying allow failure. Okay, the last one, I got 6 minutes. So here's my funny thing. You guys know about, how do you say disintermediation in Spanish? Close, basically the same word. So I think it's fair to say that the entire financial industry across the planet has been worrying about this, right? And part of their response to it is digitization, right? Digitize, digitize, digitize. I think it's completely, I'm not saying don't digitize, but I don't think that solves the problem. It's possible that that actually might accelerate the problem. And I found this quote, which I think is really interesting. An Accenture study reveals that although most consumers were satisfied with how their primary institution supported them through the pandemic, only 29% trust them to look after their financial well-being. 29%. And then it ends with, that means widespread digitization via the pandemic has come at the steep cost of trust. Uh-oh. Because if you lose trust, what happens? In your industry, if you lose trust, what happens? You are a commodity. Straight up. You can't afford to lose trust. This is the business that you're in. This data just supports the point that humans want both. They want equilibrium. They want digital and physical. They want the comfort of people. By the way, I've banked, you guys ever heard of a bank called Bank of America? That's a joke. I've banked with them for 30 years. Not once has anybody at the bank ever asked me what I did, what I aspired to do, what my fears, what my desires, what my hopes, what my wants, what my needs. They don't even know if I have kids. What business is that? It's a business that's acting like a commodity. Like, as long as we keep your dollars safe, physical dollars, you'll find us of sufficient value. I'm like, those days are over, man. So a question for you is, if 29% is the number in that little Accenture study, what's your percentage? What percentage of your customers continue to trust you? I have no idea. So this is my wacky other view. In this hybrid, balancing digital and physical, or call it touch and digital. Hermes, low digital, low touch. Amazon, high digital, low touch. And my view of the banking industry is it's been doing this. I know this is a terrible PowerPoint. Right? Heading towards high digital, lower touch, because it's much more productive, much more profitable. Activations seem pretty solid. Cost of acquisition is down. Everybody's happy. I think it's a flawed strategy. I think the answer has to be here. You got to move to high digital, high touch. I think going to the Amazon place is putting yourself out of business. Honestly, I do. So this is like the evolution of banking over the last 30 years. But this is the big point. You can't give up trust or you're screwed. You can't. So to me, the equilibrium that banks have to establish is the sense that they are there to enable potential. My bank has never done that. Again, they have no idea who I am. I'm not a banker. When I heard the whole know your customer thing, I thought that meant know your customer. It actually doesn't mean know your customer. So my view, and I'm going to cut this short, but my view is the opportunity. I wrote a piece 3 years ago called "The Future of Books and Banks," and what I was suggesting is that banks move from being a reactive distributor of cash and capital to being a proactive enabler of prosperity. And they do it through the lens of knowledge, through the lens of understanding, through the lens of expertise. They are central in the community, whether the community is local, regional, national, global. They are central players at driving the prosperity for the people they serve, proactively. My sense of banks, my bank particularly, is they are waiting. They are literally sitting in the branch or in the corporate office waiting for me to show up to ask them for money. My money, their money, I don't know. I don't think it's enough. And so in the work of banking, I think the issue, yes, there's this finding the balance between analog and digital, physical and virtual. Absolutely, that work must continue. You must continue to invest in digital technologies, but you must also continue to invest in human understanding through the lens of how can you help the people you serve realize, self-actualize the full potential of their life. That it's changing your value proposition. It's not changing your infrastructure. It's not changing your interfaces. That is not enough. I'm sorry, it's not enough. It's just hard as hell. The reason why we don't do this is because it's hard as hell. So we go to the extremes, either all physical, all digital. We don't want to get into the muck of this, but I think you got to get into the muck of this. I'm not going to do this because I'm running out of time. If anybody wants to talk about exactly how to do this, I'm around for 2 days. This is my view of the bank of the future. I kind of already said this. And you have to ask yourself, like, how well are we doing against this definition? Are we proactive? Are we connecting? Are we integrating? Are we teaching? You know, I think the answer is not very well. And this is the punchline, you know? By the way, equilibrium doesn't happen just because we want it to happen. It can only happen on the back of behavior, on the back of learning, which we'll talk more about tomorrow. But that is our opportunity. You know, a hybrid world, the future is hybrid, means it's a world where there is greater meaning, there is greater freedom, and there is greater potential to be realized. And let's do that together. That's what we can do in Latin America, and that's what we can do around the world. So thank you very much. Appreciate your time.